Yo guys, Superior David here, and I hope you're all enjoying the new balance patch. Personally, I'm just freaking ecstatic to not be going up against like 70% rogue, as I'm sure most of you are, and it's been just truly refreshing to see most of the classes represented again on ladder. And not just because, like your rogue opponents running Maestra, we're actually seeing like other classes on ladder besides rogue, and it's been great. So I thought today would be a good day to just go over some of the best emerging decks from the balance changes so far, and these are just sort of based on my personal experiences, what I've been playing, what I've been seeing a lot of on ladder, and this is all like around top 500 legend. And so take that for what it is and just be careful when crafting things because, we did just get balance changes and I'm sure things will be changing more over the next couple weeks. I guess with that out of the way, let's start things off with a couple of the proactive decks that I feel like are really starting to shape the meta, with the first of them being Beast Druid. Now, this is the deck that I feel like was probably one of the best ones of my day one experience. And I've also seen a lot of other Hearthstone personalities just speak high praise of this archetype. So definitely one that you want to be familiar with because I feel like it's going to be a real driving force in the upcoming meta. You essentially just want to explode onto the board in the first couple turns. We've got really aggressive early game minions with the Druid of the Reef that you can, I feel like you typically want to make a 1-3, but I love making it a 3-1 in like matches where like I know they don't have like a ping effect and you can really get that extra damage in early. And then you can like sort of snowball with like adorable infestation and create some really awkward situations with the peasant. And then you sort of want to sort of just continue to snowball. We got the Thorngrove Sentries and the super busted Frostwolf Kennels that you sort of, I think ideally you would love to get down with like Nature Studies on turn 2. So you play Nature Studies turn 1. That allows you to get Frostwolf Kennels down on turn 2. And that is wonderful because you can start building your board. And by doing this, you're casting spells, which discounts your Umbral Owl. And by summoning these beasts, you also discount the Frost Saber Matriarch. And the goal of this deck is to sort of, again, get that sort of snowball pressure in the early game. And then you sort of close out in the mid to late game by using the Oracle of Elune with discounted Frost Saber Matriarchs and Umbral Owls to just make these really obnoxious boards that you can then make even more obnoxious with like an Arbor up. And, if all else fails, you've got the Goof just goofing around doing his thing in this deck. He just goes into every deck. I love Guff. He's awesome. In this deck, he sort of, the role he sort of plays here is that he allows you to just like accumulate more mana so you can sort of abuse Oracle of Elune better with like the Ibis, or you could do some like dirty things with like Speaker Ghidra and like, maybe get like an Arbor up, or maybe you discover like a big spell off Nature Studies. Just Guff allows for some like real flexible, annoying situations. And I didn't even mention Kazakis. You could go for like a 10 mana golem, pretty easily with the Guff. But anyways, moving right along now to another very proactive deck that I feel like is also shaping the meta. And that would be, everyone's favorite OG Smarker, and that is the Face Hunter. Now, the great thing about Face Hunter right now is that there are a ton of spell-based decks because people are being super greedy Garys in the meta right now, because that's what people do after there are balance changes. They want to play all their fun, greedy cards, and Face Hunter is just like, no fun for you. I'm going to play Iron Deep Trog on turn 1. You can't play spells anymore. And as someone who's played a lot of Ramp Druid, this Iron Deep Trog on turn 1 can just spell disaster for like any slower deck if they can't deal with it, because it just makes games so awkward for them. And if you can follow it up with like a Doggy Biscuit on the Iron Deep Trog, you could just win games like that. But I really wanted to highlight this list in particular because, I feel like we all know the go-to Face Hunter list. I feel like there are no surprises here, but I thought this list was really interesting because it runs the True M Crescent, which of course has synergy with the Trampling Rhino, but I thought it was even cooler because it runs the Beast Stalker Tavish, which I'm not sure if this is like the best way to build Face Hunter. It seems a little counterintuitive to me, but I have actually been encountering this build on ladder, so I'm like, hey, why not show it off? But if you're not digging this stuff, that's okay. You could sort of go back to the Arcane Anomaly, which I feel like this deck was running 2 Arcane Anomalies, and then some genius on ladder was just like, hey, let's take those out, put in True M Crescent and Beaststalker Tavish to spice things up a bit. But, again, if you want to just keep it consistent, and also I guess save some dust because this is a legendary, you can just go double Arcane Anomaly and it just makes it a bit cheaper. So keep that in mind. And I guess since there are aggro decks, there must be decks that counter the aggro decks. And I think moving on to another, familiar face here, the deck that seems to be emerging to sort of counter all these, proactive strategies like the Beast Druid and the Face Hunter seems to be the Quest Warlock, everyone's favorite deck in the meta. Will it get nerfed again? Probably not with, the mini set coming up so soon. But this is the list that I've been going up against a lot on ladder. And as you'll see, it runs the double Altar of Fire, which I feel like a lot of people sort of misunderstand what this card is used for. Like, yes, it's really good because it can sort of screw over any like control or combo decks, which there are actually quite a bit of on ladder right now. People are just experimenting with control priests again. So this makes that favored matchup a lot more favored because you can just like burn all the priest good cards. It's wonderful when that happens. But I feel like the real benefit of Altar of Fire is just milling cards from your own deck so you can get to like your Baron Scavenger at 1 mana a bit faster, as well as the Bloodshard Bristleback to sort of just get so you could like proc its Battlecry and gain that life. Quest Warlock is still amazing. Like, it's a deck that I feel like people thought would be good after the nerfs, and yeah, I think we're just sort of confirming that it is still good because the quest itself, just whenever someone wants to play a control deck now, you just play Quest Warlock because the quest itself is just inherently good against like any slower strategy. Like, people will try to play their control warriors and their control priests and try to like outvalue, but this deck doesn't care about value because, you know, it just rushes to fatigue and then the other deck just takes damage for the rest of the game. And like those slower decks that can't like really apply that pressure, they will pretty often just sort of crumble to this because it's really backbreaking for like any slower deck. Quest Warlock is also really well positioned because of its amazing removal, and particularly the Soul Rend, which I feel like it's secretly the most busted card in the deck. Or maybe it's not a secret anymore, but I think it's like after the quest, this is the next most busted card. I mean, some would say Flesh Giant, but you know, I think it's the Soul Rend because this is this huge AoE that could just sort of destroy any board. Like, there are very few decks that can create a whole board of like minions with more than 5 health by turn 4. So this is really just like a hard check against like any sort of aggressive strategy. And I find it absolutely creates these horrible moments for Beast Druid. So if you're sick of Beast Druid, definitely check out the Quest Warlock because the Soul Rend will just destroy their souls. And then of course, you know, you got the quest to close out games, but you can also close out games with the good old, like, you know, like Flesh Giant with the Battleground Battlemaster. That's always, you know, that's Old Faithful right there. Really good way to just close out games with Quest Warlock that way. But definitely expect Quest Warlock to stick around. I feel like it's just been omnipresent in the metagame just because it just destroys any control strategy. And then you could also just sort of cheat some mana, clear off a board, and win that way. It's just like honestly like a surprisingly flexible deck. Now, moving on to a deck that I feel like is sort of becoming the combo deck of choice in the meta right now, and actually it was performing like a lot better than I thought it would, and that is the Bolnar OTK Shaman, and this is Phenos list specifically. The board sort of matters again, and that makes this deck really good because we have great board stalling tools with, of course, the Snowfall Guardian, still amazing, and then the Sleep Breaker to sort of get the wind chills to slow games down that way, and oh, of course, how was this card not nerfed? Wildpaw Cavern, still busted. If this card's still good after Lightning Bloom rotates, I would not be surprised if it gets nerfed because it's so freaking good. But anyways, you know, this deck is definitely coming back in the meta pretty strong. It also does well against Warlock. I didn't mention that. Just because you can just, like, you know, those Warlocks, they'll make their huge board of Flesh Giants, and you can just be like, nah, you're not going to attack me in the face. And then, you know, the Warlocks will get themselves low on life. And oftentimes, you don't even need, like, the OTK to kill them. You can just sort of burst them down. But if you do want to go for the OTK, remember, you got to play the Bolnar Hammer Break, and then you play Lightning Bloom, and then you got to play Yasharaj. And only do this if you've already played a Corrupted Dunk Tank and a Circus Medic, because, you know, if you play both of these, you'll be able to just go infinite with, you know, with the Bolnar and the Yasharaj. It just creates this loop that allows you to just basically get infinite Dunk Tanks. And you know, the funny thing about this combo deck is I thought the animation speed would sort of limit how much damage it could do, sort of like how that was sort of the case with Mizaki Mage, where, like, you know, Druid could have done really well against Mizaki Mage before because you could just gain a bunch of armor, and sometimes the Mage just wouldn't have the APM to close out games. I got a lot of free wins that way. It was hysterical, but this deck, not so much. The animations are actually surprisingly fast compared to other combo decks, and I was literally at like 70 life, and I was just like all high and mighty, like, ah, yes, my opponent shall not kill me here. I am a filthy priest with all of my armor. And joke was on me because they absolutely burst me down from 70 life. And it was, honestly, I just found it to be very impressive. So that being said, don't let like any APM requirements scare you away from playing this deck. You really don't need them, and it's definitely a really good deck in the meta right now. And now moving on to the next one, I think this might be the last one. Oh, this is the last one. And now this is a deck that I've been seeing streamers do very well with. I think it's a very high skill cap deck that I think will ultimately limit how well it's going to perform on ladder, but playing against it and playing it a bit myself, I can see it actually being pretty good, and that is Jombray's Miracle Priest over here. Now, this deck is a silly one, and you basically want to like discount spells. I mean, ideally first with the Palm Reading, so that you can then pop off with the Nazmani Bloodweaver and just further discount stuff in your hand. And then ideally you want to sort of like stick like an Alec mount on a minion, and then you want to duplicate it with like a Psyche Split or even like a Gift of the Luminance. So you can just make this wall of like taunts where your opponent just like can never hit you in the face, and then they sort of just get pissed off and concede. It's hysterical. Or you could do something silly like you play so many spells with like Nazmani Bloodweaver, you get the Malagos down to like like a few like mana, like 5, 6. I've had actually against Jombre, he got this Malygos down to 0 mana against me, and needless to say, I got very salty about it, but I was sort of like, wow, that was pretty cool, Jombre. But anyways, I feel like people are experimenting a lot with priests right now, particularly like slower control priest decks, and I haven't really been the biggest fan of them. And I feel like the benefit of this Miracle Priest here is that, you could just sort of scam like games against slower decks where like you get like an early Nazmani down, they just can't deal with it. And then you just sort of snowball from there and absolutely destroy them. And so I think this deck is a lot of fun. It's going to take a very knowledgeable Hearthstone player to sort of pilot it to the best of its abilities. I definitely threw a lot of games on stream, but I think Priest can be viable on ladder, and I'm definitely very bullish on this deck, especially since the meta seems to have slowed down a bit since, again, there are no longer 0 mana 4/5s coming down on turn 2. So like this deck could sort of take its time and wait to go in on the Nazmani Bloodweaver, which I think is the key to piloting this deck. But anyways, get out of here. I mean, some of you are probably afraid of Priest, so we're gonna get out of there. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for some of the best emerging decks. And just to recap, we talked about some Beast Druids, some Face Hunter, some Quest Warlock, and of course the Bolnar OTK Shaman and Jombre's Miracle Priest. That I feel like it could go either way, but if you're a skilled player, I think you could do well with it. And of course, just gotta say this. Don't try Dude Paladin. This is my Dude Paladin here. It's Dude, where's my rank? It didn't do very well. I got baited into it. Don't get baited like David. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, again, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And in the meantime, let me know down in the comments if you want to see like any videos on any of these decks, or just let me know how you feel about the meta right now. Because again, personally, I'm really ecstatic. I'm really enjoying it. And I hope we can continue this on until the mini set, which will hopefully drop, sometime in February. I don't know anything, but that's just sort of my hope. But guys, stay superior. I'll catch you on the next one. Later. Dirt.